human beings can't even compare to what a machine will be able to compute or figure out. And we're moving towards this singularity where, the computers are going to exceed anything that we can even possibly conceive of. But what's going to be left to differentiate us from the machine? What's going to be there to keep us as better and higher in the hierarchy than a machine that's smarter than us? And the answer to that lies in our intuition. So the intuition is becoming the holy grail. And I think we're going to see that unfolding over the next decade.
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, the best place to shop for unique clothing, spiritual handcrafted jewelry, healing gemstones, and fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now, here's your host, Brett Larkin.
Hello, Savannah family. Welcome back to the show. We are on the theme of intuition this week. If you missed the memo, we are now broadcasting twice a week instead of just once. So you want to make sure to come and find me on Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of just Tuesdays. Today, we're continuing our conversation with intuition expert Kim Chestney. We're going to learn why we must intuit or die, in Kim's words, and she's going to tell us about her concept of spiritual Darwinism. Together, we talk about how we're globally transitioning from the information age to what Kim calls the imagination age, and what that looks like on both a personal level and in the workplace. I also ask him some tough questions, like what to do if your intuition steers you wrong. How can we really step into a place of trust, and how to use intuition to overcome our fears. This episode really is all about this magical convergence of spirituality and science. I'm so excited to share it with you. Before we dive in, I just wanted to remind you that the best way to support the podcast is to leave a review here on iTunes, even if iTunes isn't how you normally listen to the show, and to make a purchase on SavannahSpirit.com. If you get inspired by this week's theme of intuition, I'd encourage you to check out lapis lazuli crystals on SavannahSpirit.com. These are known to improve your intuitive abilities. Lapis lazuli is a powerful gemstone worn by the ancient Egyptians for its various enhancing qualities. SavannahSpirit.com has a beautiful jewelry collection and crystals you can put around your home or carry with you in your bag on the go. Make sure to use that discount code podcast30 for 30% off your first order of lapis lazuli crystals or anything else you desire on the website. Okay, so jumping into part 2 of our discussion with Kim. So Kim, what is spiritual Darwinism?
That's an interesting topic and something none of us want to fall prey to. So I came up with this idea for an article I wrote for the Elephant Journal a couple years ago called Intuit or Die. And my own intuition sort of unraveled this concept. And I really like it. And I think it's sort of a fun, playful way of really demonstrating how important it is for us all to honor and follow our intuition. So the idea, the concept behind the spiritual Darwinism is that intuition is really the secret sauce towards our transformation as human beings, right? So when we talk about evolution, the evolution of our spirits and our souls and our lives, we're talking about something that's driven by our intuition. So a lot of people don't really understand that, but when you take it back far and far enough, it all comes back to the end to sort of this motivating force within us to improve and to be better than what we are. So a lot of us, some of us follow it. Some of us create our lives. Some are out there manifesting, changing, learning, growing. And others are like, no, I don't really think I want to do that. I want to just not listen to that and kind of just stay here, right? So then you see this sort of process happening, and it metaphorically, you can see it in nature when we talk about this idea of Darwinism, of how when species adapt and change, they're the ones that survive. And the ones that don't adapt and stay in situations that don't fit them and don't fit the environment, they're the ones that don't survive. So carrying this metaphor over on a spiritual level and applying it with intuition really just demonstrates this whole concept of if we have to intuit or we're going to die, we have to get out there and change and be better. And I don't mean like we're going to die as in like, someone's going to kill us. I mean that our souls are going to die, right? Like our hearts are going to grow and be full of love and experience the world, right? We just don't want to shrivel up and stay in this place of non-growth and non-life. That's it in a nutshell. And much more to say, but that's the nutshell.
Right. So you're talking about intuition as the source of human spiritual evolution. Is that right?
Correct. That's it.
Gotcha. So if we want to evolve and we want to make sure that we're one of the ones who are practicing this, I know in the last episode you gave us some really great tips for awakening our intuition in general, but what about in the context of our work and, in the office? Like, you've mentioned a couple times how we're surrounded in this day and age with so much technology, and the linear thinking and logic kind of seems like it's king for most of us in our workday and maybe even in our whole lives. What do you have to share with us about how we can begin to move into what you're calling this imagination age? And what is the imagination age?
Oh, yeah, this is an interesting concept. So, living at the height of the information age now in technology and the modern world, we're really being called to move past this into a more creative, more intuitive perception of the world and our surroundings. It's really going to be, we have this sort of movement and the evolution in technology towards artificial intelligence. And, you look at computers and you see the way information's processed, and, human beings can't even compare to what a machine will be able to compute or figure out. And we're moving towards this singularity where, the computers are going to exceed anything that we can even possibly conceive of. But what's going to be left to differentiate us from the machine? What's going to be there to keep us as better and higher in the hierarchy than a machine that's smarter than us? And the answer to that lies in our intuition. So the intuition is becoming the holy grail. And I think we're going to see that unfolding over the next decade more and more. Intuition is going to move out of the fringes of spirituality, where it's kind of been in this nebulous area, into the places where it's going to have a really practical application in life. We're going to need to use our intuition to solve problems in a way that machines can't solve them. We're going to need to use our intuition to create cultures and to keep our humanity alive in a time of data, in a time of ones and zeros and machines and all of these things. It's going to be our intuition that keeps that spark of humanity at the forefront.
I know, I love that. And I know you've said that intuition is truly the most important part of being a human. And now you're really saying it's what separates us from a computer or a machine.
Right, absolutely.
So talk to us more about how intuition can play a role in the workplace.
Well, we're seeing more and more as creative cultures change. You can see it in it's sort of you look at Google and you see how creative their cultures become, and we're moving away from the, sort of old school, like cube mentality and thinking of how can we work together more creatively? How can this sort of creativity infuse into our workplace and how we want to work? Now, another thing is, we're entering in a phase of the gig economy now where everything's breaking down and people are working for themselves, and people have this opportunity to be creative and to start their own businesses and to live their dreams and live their truth. And I think this is a huge part of intuition in terms of how it plays out in, on a global scale in terms of economy and culture. You have these people who, we used to all be worker bees working for a company or working for other people. And now, they say within the next 20 years, like some huge number, like 50% of the workforce is going to be self-employed, working for themselves. So as this change happens, and more of us are out there working at, co-working spaces, working in different non-traditional situations, we now have the power to live our dreams in a way we never did before. If I wanted 20 years ago, if I wanted to go and start a company and do something, there were so many more barriers than there are now. Now we have technology and we have the internet and we have all these ways that we can just go out and do it. And it's easy. So now we have this barrier removed with our self-expression. And this huge part of creative intuition is tied to self-expression, right? So, and I started to say a little bit in our last podcast about how important this two-step process of intuition is, right? So first we have the awareness where we quiet our minds and we become still. And it can be a lifestyle, right? We want to create a culture of intuition in our life, right? So we want to live mindfully. We want to live deliberately. We want to provide our intuitions opportunity to connect with us and to communicate with us on a regular basis so that every moment of the day we're hand in hand with our intuition. We live closely with our intuition. Living in that culture of intuition and actually having awareness of the path our intuition wants us to take, the energy our intuition wants us to bring in to make the world a better place and to make ourselves a better place. That awareness, right, is half the battle. So once we become aware of this, then we have to start actualizing. So there's self-awareness and there's self-actualization. And these are two important dualities of intuition. We have to kind of be like the yin and the yang, right? It kind of completes each other. Neither one is right without the other. So we have to have the input from intuition, from the heavens, from the ethers that comes to us. And then we have to let that intuition flow through us and out into the world through the decisions we make, the creative things that we build, the relationships we form, and all the different things that manifest in the world. So that's the second half of our responsibility. And that ties in really well to, where we are at culturally and economically in our society today, is empowering people to be able to go out and create this good cause and do this good thing and do something that would have been harder to do 20 years ago, right? So we're all more empowered, and that ties it back into this imagination age, because now we're dreaming things and we're making them real. We're manifesting things. We are in a place where we can create and we can keep these ones and zeros and data of the information age as our foundation, but launch into an age where we can manifest and dream and create things on our own in a way we never have before.
This is very cool. I feel like what I'm hearing you say is that we can think of our intuition as this input from universal intelligence or God or the heavens, whatever people choose to say. And then I think where people get really stuck, it's like, oh, well, my intuition's telling me to do something that sounds crazy or difficult. But you're saying like that's where our creativity comes in. That's the second step. Because I do think that we do forget that it's a two-part process, like you said in the first episode. Like part one is receiving the download. That's great. But then part two is we have to go out and do something about it. And a lot of time that thing that we're supposed to go out and do might seem counterintuitive or might seem crazy. And that's where it's like we need to use our creativity to figure out the right way to manifest what our intuition is telling us. Is that correct?
Absolutely, right. And because that creativity and that emotive force of intuition is like the initiator of the second half of the process, right? So we're moved to do something by our intuition, and then we use our creativity and our inspiration to figure out the best way to do that in a way to make it happen in real. But we're also forgetting about there's a really crucial thing that happens between the two, between the awareness and the actualization. And this really cuts to the core of intuition and all spiritual growth. And that thing is trust. So you really hit the nail on the head when you said a couple of times about how intuition tells us to do these crazy things. And yeah, it does. It always pushes us. It pushes us to be outside ourselves, to take chances, to take risks, to not be afraid. So in order to do all those things, we have to trust it, right? And that getting to that place of abandon where you purely trust, like, you know what, I'm just going to throw myself into the void and I'm going to just trust my intuition. That's where we all need to live, but that's the scary part, because intuition, the thing that intuition is telling us to do 9 times out of 10 isn't the thing that is the easy thing to do, right? So getting to this place where you trust intuition, you trust that whatever the universe is asking you to do is for your own good, right? Having that acceptance that I am at peace with whatever the outcome of the situation. I'm not attached. My intuition is telling me to do this. It sounds a little crazy, but I trust my intuition, and it feels like this is what my intuition wants me to do, so I'm going to do it, but not on the contingency that, oh, I'm going to do this. It's going to be an ego gratification for me, or it's not worth my time. It's on the contingency that I'm going to do it because the universe knows what's best for me, and I trust in the universe. And it may or may not work out for my hopes and dreams, but in the end, I trust that the path that I'm being taken on is for my ultimate good.
Yeah, and I think that point of ultimate good is really important, because my next question for you was, well, what's your advice for people who've listened to their intuition in the past and felt like it steered them in the wrong direction?
Great question. That is a great question. I get that a lot. And my answer to it is intuition is never wrong. We're wrong. So what we have to ask ourselves is if it was a genuine intuition, or if it was our fears talking, or if it was our hopes talking, or our wishes talking. Because an intuition won't be wrong. And if it genuinely was our intuition, then maybe whatever the intuition was steering us towards didn't feel good right now, or maybe it didn't immediately seem like it was right. But in the end, it'll take us to where we need to be, perhaps on a road we didn't see.
Yeah, I think that's the way I've often looked at it too. It's, maybe you share the crazy idea with your boss and he ends up firing you, and that seems like terrible, and like your intuition led you wrong in the short term, but that led you to then, becoming the founder of your own company, or, when you take like a macro view, intuition is always right.
Exactly. Yeah, you just have to get out of the moment sometimes and just give it some time.
Very cool. All right. Now, if you're up for it, for our last bit of time together, I'd love to do a lightning round. Are you up for it?
I'm up for it.
Okay, awesome. So my first lightning round question for you is, when do you feel sad and when do you feel frustrated? And in those moments, how do you cope using your intuition?
They say that you can gauge your level of connection with your intuition by your level of happiness. I've noticed that since I've worked in the recent years, since I've started to trust my intuition more than I have in the past, I've felt less sad or frustrated. I don't feel it as much anymore because I think I'm kind of looking for the backwards view again, but I find that by trusting my intuition and honoring my intuition and living my intuition, I less often feel sad and frustrated, because when I'm sad, I'm always falling back. When I'm inclined to feel sad, like if I'm tempted to feel sad about something, I trust that there's no reason to feel sad because my intuition is there and is always supporting me, and that the universe always has my best interest in mind. And I truly believe that and live that. So, there's moments like obviously when I'm in traffic and like I get frustrated, like that kind of thing happens. And that's more just like, I guess, just breathing through it, right? But on a higher soul level, I say I don't really feel those feelings of sadness, frustration when I'm living my truth.
It's interesting because listening to you, it sounds like feelings of sadness or frustration are only coming up when we're in resistance to the flow of energy that you're describing as intuition.
Exactly.
Lightning round question number 2, not planned, but what are your best ways for getting into the flow? I know you mentioned going for a workout or doing some artwork or a creative endeavor. Are there any others you want to share with listeners?
Going on in nature. Give yourself like a nature bath. That is a great way. Just go for a walk. Just go meditate in the sunlight. Connecting with the peace and the quiet of the earth and giving yourself space and grounding is a really nice way to get those intuitive juices flowing. That, and anything creative, like doing creative work is truly one of the most motivating ways to get that intuition. And another thing I want to say, it just popped in my head, was it's really important when you're working with your intuition, and if you're meditating and you're working on doing visualizations to open your intuition, to be sure that you're looking within yourself. I think there's a tendency in spiritual practice and metaphysical practice to look outside ourselves sometimes for validation, for like visions or spiritual experiences, or like astral travel, things like that. Like all those things are great. We don't need to do any of that stuff to access our intuition, because our intuition is inside of us. It's in our hearts. It's in our minds. It's in our bodies. It's inside of us. And all we have to do is tune in and open up to it. And it's there in a form of a loving, radiant joy that's nurturing us and growing us. So that's the energy we want to look for when we're looking for intuition. Don't worry about like seeing energy out in the air, or all the different things that people, the exercises that people will talk about in terms of, like looking at things or perceiving things outside of our bodies. Intuition is an introspective process. So don't be distracted by things outside. Turn within and look for that glowing, feeling energy within yourself.
I know it's so interesting because I think it's something we visualize outside of ourselves, but it is also us. I mean, for me, I always think of it as that idea of universal consciousness, or Brahman in the tantric philosophy, as we are made up of the same stuff as universal intelligence. It's like universal intelligence is the ocean and we are a droplet. So it's within us, but it's also around and above us as well, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That was a really good example. Exactly.
Beautiful. Okay, question number 3. What's the best advice you've ever received? Beyond listen to your intuition, because that's too easy.
I feel like I needed to prepare for these. Yeah, listen to your intuition. There's no better advice than that. Really, just to be happy. Like, honestly, I feel that just accepting, I love what Eckhart Tolle says in his book, resist nothing, right? Just to resist nothing just brings you this sense of inner joy and knowing that everything, every awful thing, every great thing that happens to you is all for the same purpose. And having this pure acceptance of whatever comes brings this happiness that, you carry with you inside, and nothing can shake that. So yeah, resist nothing, be happy.
I love that. Resist nothing. Okay, next question. Is there anything that you find yourself still struggling with on your spiritual path that you'd be willing to share with listeners?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, and it changes from time to time, I think, at different stages in our life. For me, I think I am definitely a creative, intuitive person. So I have a very strong drive to create and express myself. And I need to focus more on the yin side instead of the yang side of making time for myself and making time to be still and to honor myself. I think that's a challenge that I think a lot of us have when we're living these busy lives and trying to share messages with the world and to bring good into the world. It's easy to get unbalanced in terms of that direction in our culture. And so for myself right now, I think I need to remind myself that it's okay to be still and to let myself receive some intuition from time to time in a still way.
I know, to practice that self-care, that's something I'm always working on as well. All right, and then last question. I think you'll really like this one. I was hoping that you could give me and the listeners some advice for folks who want to bring this idea of intuition and creativity maybe into their workplace, or towards, integrate it with someone who's maybe not so open to the concept. How would you suggest that they approach them?
Oh my, wow. Again, really good question. And I mean, I have struggled with this myself. A lot of the work I work in the technology business, but I do a lot of work with creativity in the arts. So very early on, I was trying to bring this really intuitive perspective to technology. And my gosh, I got hate mail. I mean, it was like people were like out for blood. They just, like, both sides, like the arty people didn't want to have anything to do with this technology that was killing their soul. And then the tech people didn't want any of those crazy artists around. So bringing these worlds, this like the rational world and the creative world together was truly a clash. But what we did find over time was the more that people realized how they were really two different sides of the same coin and how important it was for them to work together. I think this idea of collaboration of different things is sort of a magical alchemy, right? So, I did a study with Carnegie Mellon University a few years back on what makes a successful business. And some of the key points that we came out with were working with other companies and people that were different than you was a factor of success. And collaborating outside your comfort zone was the other factor of success. So this idea of being different is actually a good thing. So when you bring your intuition in, it's definitely, you're going to be a square peg in a round hole. But hopefully you'll get one or two people, early adopters, who really see the visionary side of your work and can put together this sort of connectivity in a unique, out-of-the-box way and understand its value. So talking in these terms and sharing the real practical sides and the studies and things that have pointed out, it help people to understand eventually how important it is. Truly, what we need to do is embrace this yin and this yang, the yin and the yang of the two sides of the workplace, and create a new culture of creativity and intuition in the workplace.
I love it. It's a huge challenge, but I think you're so courageous in doing this work and trying to bring the spirituality and science piece together. Kim, where can listeners find and connect with you online beyond this interview? And thank you so much for being with us on the show and taking the time.
Thank you for having me. This is such a treat. Yeah, you can, my website, kimchestney.com, pretty much has a link to everything. Instagram is kim.chestney. So there's a lot of ways. You just Google Kim Chestney and I'm the only one.
Perfect. And that's spelled Chestney. I'll also, of course, put it right below in the show notes. Savannah listeners, thank you so much for being here. I would love to hear your feedback on these 2 amazing episodes we had with Kim. Do you feel like you got some great tips on how to access your intuition? Are you thinking about your intuition in a new way? I would love to hear from you either in the Savannah private Facebook group or in the form of an iTunes rating or review. Those iTunes rating and reviews, even if iTunes isn't how you normally listen to the show, mean the world to me. They help get the show in front of more listeners looking to transform their life through yoga and meditation. So I would love to get your feedback there. And as always, if you enjoyed the podcast, show your love and support by making a purchase on savannahspirit.com. Use that code podcast30 for 30% off anything your heart desires. I hope you have a beautiful day full of yoga, meditation, and you cultivate some time to really listen to your intuition, practice some of the techniques that Kim shared with us over these 2 amazing episodes. I know I'm going to practice some inviting in flow and light tonight when I do my meditation. So Kim, thanks once again for being with us, and from Kim and I, yes, to all of you, from our hearts to yours, namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaeast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.